Winter 2024. Just before dawn. 4 degrees below. 0 on the runway. A North Korean fighter, the pride of the fleet, sits with its canopy still open. The pilot climbs in, and before he closes it, he does something odd. He reaches into his flight suit and touches his chest pocket. Just touches it, checking something is still there. Then the canopy comes down. 6:02. Wheels up. It should have slipped quietly into its patrol route and disappeared. 6:14. The nose swings south. Captain Ree, you've deviated. Return immediately. He switches the radio off. The tower gives one order to men already running for their jets. Men he flew with yesterday. Shoot him down. 3 minutes. Missiles from his own country lock onto his back. Ahead of him, a flight of South Korean F-15Ks comes in head-on. And the man in that cockpit? The ace of North Korea's elite guard air force. Their finest. He gripped the stick and wept out loud. Fear? No. Something else. Whatever's in that pocket is the reason he's out here at all. Stay with me to the end, and you'll understand the choice he made. If this story means something to you, a like and a subscribe help more than you know. And leave a comment, whatever comes to mind while you listen. It keeps us going.
I can't give you my name, but I can tell you this much. I was a blade, and the sky over my country was mine to guard. Youngest man ever to lead a formation. Medals across my chest. They called me the pride of the sky, whose heart that blade was actually pointed at. That came to me far too late. On my last flight, one thing kept my finger off the trigger. A photograph in the inside pocket of my flight suit folded and refolded until the creases had worn through. My 7-year-old son had drawn it in crayon, an airplane and his father. That drawing stopped my hand. What follows is the record of what I wagered the sky, the ground, and my own life to save that boy. I was 23 the first time. I climbed into a fighter. I still remember who I was then. The engine roaring at the end of the runway, that weight pressing me into the seat. Punched through the clouds, and my country opened up beneath me. Rivers running along the ridge lines, snow on the peaks, morning light, pouring over all of it. Back then, I believed that sky belonged to me. I believed I was protecting everything below it. I moved fast, first of my class to command a formation. Youngest captain in the service. Command called me the pride of the Guard Air Force. Commendations arrived at our quarters every holiday. My son, Jin-hyuk, used to fall asleep, with his fingers on the medals pinned to my chest. Father, this one's really shiny. That small hand tracing the ribbon. I can still see his face. People envied me. They had reason to. I was the blade my country valued most. But behind the medals, the life we lived didn't shine at all, even in elite pilot's quarters. Got a few hours of electricity a day. After sunset, the whole compound went black as ink. One winter, my son coughed through the night with a fever, and I could see my own breath in the room. Cold air came through the cracks in the wall and found its way under the blanket. I took off my flight suit and laid it over him, rubbed my frozen hands together, and waited for morning by a single candle. A man who flew at the speed of sound couldn't keep his own son warm. I couldn't say that out loud. Not then, not anywhere. Rations stopped coming again and again. The men who serviced my aircraft got through a day on a bowl of thin porridge. 18, 19 years old boys. I can still see them swallowing it down with grease-stained hands. The weapons that defended the nation were polished to a shine. The people polishing them were starving. One fighter jet the cost of one would have fed every last one of those boys for years. Nobody said that. In our country, saying it was the crime. My wife died the year Jin-hyuk turned 5. It was a common illness, the kind medicine handles. If the medicine exists, ours didn't. I went everywhere, called in every favor from every man I knew, and the pride of the sky couldn't come up with one course of medicine for his own wife. She held my hand at the end and asked me to take care of Jin-hyuk. That was all. I carried those words like a debt for the rest of my life. After that, 2 people were left to me. My aging father, my young son. That was everything I had on that soil. I didn't question any of it, or rather I worked hard not to. If this country was right, then the years I'd given it weren't wasted. Close your eyes, close your ears, fly where they tell you, do that much, And at least your son stays safe. That was the belief that put me back. In the cockpit every single morning. It took exactly one flight to break it. I'll carry that patrol with me until I die. Over the East Sea, a route I'd flown 100 times. Then a strange order came over the radio. A set of coordinates. Approach the object, confirm it, report back. Nothing more. It was a fishing boat. A small one. Our people working. Men on deck. Were hauling in nets. And when they spotted my aircraft, some of them waved. Then command's response came back wrong. That boat was being logged as a reactionary element attempting contact with the South. Old fishermen pulling in nets. Faces turned up, smiling, waving. That's what I had actually seen. A few days later, everyone aboard that boat went silent. All that was left was a rumor that an entire village had been erased. Nobody spoke the village's name out loud. I asked my flight leader without thinking, that boat, was it really reactionary? One sentence. I had no idea one sentence would walk me to the edge of a cliff. He didn't answer. He just stared at me for a long, long time. It took me a while to understand that look. After that, an unfamiliar man started turning up outside our quarters. Bowie State Security. One afternoon, Jin Hyuk came home from school with a question. Father, a man asked me today, what kinds of things you've been talking about lately? They were interrogating a 7-year-old about his father. That night, I stood over my sleeping son for a long time, his chest rising and falling, and everything in me went cold. In our country, when a father falls under suspicion, the guilt passes down to the son, to the grandson. One question, could swallow this boy's entire life. He'd done nothing. Born as my son, that was his only crime, and it could take his whole future. Not long after, another pilot from that fishing boat operation disappeared. Captain Kim. 10 years in the same formation with me. We trained together, ate together, knew each other's children by name. One morning he wasn't at the field, and nobody said his name, like he'd never existed. Another family had already moved into his quarters. No one knew where his wife and children had gone. I asked a few people carefully. They looked away and found somewhere else to be. Overnight, Captain Kim was scrubbed off. The face of the earth. That's when it hit me. I'm next. And when I go, my father and my son go with me, just like Kim's family. I stopped sleeping through the night. Footsteps outside the door woke me, headlights stopping in front of the compound. Turned my blood to ice, boots on gravel coming closer. I'd hold my breath under the blanket and wait to hear whether they stopped at our door. Not knowing when they'd come was worse than dying. Every day was thin ice. I forgot how to smile, even in front of my son. I had to put a face on. Every morning I sent that boy to school and thought the same thing. Will I get to hold him again tonight? In our country, you couldn't promise even that. Every time he turned the corner, at the end of the alley, I prayed it wasn't the last time. The decision came from somewhere I never expected. That night, my father came quietly into my room. A man who'd spent his life as a Korean People's Army sergeant. A man who believed in that country more than anyone I knew. He said nothing. He just pressed something into my hand. An old compass, the worn, battered thing he'd carried since he was young. The needle still pointed north. Father, why are you giving me this? He looked me straight in the eye and said 6 words low and steady. Go. Jin Hyuk has to live. Something in me gave way. He'd known all along. What I was thinking, what I was afraid to do, and that he intended to stay behind and be the shield. A man who'd given his entire life to that country was pushing his own son out the door with his own hands. What that cost him? I couldn't begin to measure. I held his hands and cried. Those hands had gripped rifles and worked soil until the skin split like tree bark. And holding them, I made up my mind. I'm leaving. To save this boy, I have to betray the sky. I swore to protect. I couldn't do it alone. Flying a fighter all the way south takes fuel, takes information, takes someone willing to bet their life on you. Mansu, my mechanic since my days as a 2nd lieutenant. One of those boys I used to cover with my flight suit. By then he knew that aircraft better than I did. The man I trusted most, and the man who knew me best. I was still working up to it when he took my hand first. Captain, I've known for a while. His eyes were already wet. He said he'd load my aircraft to maximum fuel for that last patrol, far past regulation. If anyone caught it, He'd be shot where he stood. Then he handed me a scrap of paper, no bigger than my palm, covered in tiny writing, South Korean control frequencies and the defection coordinates. His hands had shaken, and the letters ran crooked. That scrap was my lifeline. At the same time, I sent my father and my son a different way. The sky was mine alone. They'd crossed the Tumen River. With a border broker we could trust. I put my boy's small hand into my father's hand at dawn. I still see that in my sleep. Jin Hyuk had no idea what was happening. He looked up at me and asked, "Father, when are you coming?" All I could give him was soon. Soon. Father's coming soon. And I clenched my teeth and prayed it wouldn't turn out to be a lie. The night before, Mansu saluted me. "Captain, I'm staying. I'll see you in the sky." I understood what that meant. What would happen to him once I was gone? He traded his life for my son's freedom and mine. I couldn't return that salute. I pulled him into my arms and held on. That was the last time I saw him. Then the morning came. A routine patrol like any other. The tank's full, the way Mansu promised. Wheels up. My heart slammed against my ribs. My palm went slick on the stick. The moment I left the route, the radio came alive. My flight leader. "Captain Rhee, you've deviated. Return immediately." I said nothing. I set my teeth and pulled the nose south. "Captain Rhee." "Respond." "Rhee Kang-ho." His voice climbed higher. I switched the radio off. The cockpit went dead silent. There was no bridge left behind me. Alarms. Surface-to-air radar had me. Interceptors were already climbing off the field behind me. The tower's order cut through the air. 3 minutes. "Shoot him down!" I dropped altitude and hugged the ridgelines. So low the treetops came up at me. Warning tones screamed across the panel. "Missile launch." I broke hard. The airframe howled like it was tearing apart. The blast went off behind me, and the shockwave rocked the aircraft. It missed, barely. There was no time to breathe. Then the fuel lights started blinking. Everything Mansu had poured in was running out. The South Korean Air Defense Identification Zone was right there. A little more. Just a little more. Jin Hyuk. Just a little more. I pushed the stick and held on. That's when new aircraft came out of the haze in front of me, closing head-on. South Korean F-15Ks. I shut my eyes. So this is where it ends. Chased from behind, shot down from the front. "Jin Hyuk, your father only made it this far. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." They didn't fire. Instead, the F-15Ks slid in on either side of me and settled into formation. One of them rocked its wings, slow and deliberate. "Follow us. We'll take you in." Then a voice came through the radio in Korean. Clear. Calm. "We'll guide you somewhere safe. Please follow us." And I came apart, hands locked on the stick, crying like a child. Everything I'd held down for years came out at once. What those tears were for, I couldn't have told you then. We made it. We're alive. The days after I landed felt like walking through a dream. The first thing that got me was the night. Coming down from the north, I'd looked out at that land in the dark, and it was lit up like daytime. I'd spent my whole life in blackouts, putting my son to sleep by candlelight. Here, entire cities stayed awake and burning until morning. Lights strung along the river, headlights in an unbroken line, warm squares of yellow in every window. Every single one of those lights was somebody's home, and I couldn't make myself believe it. From our side, the South always looked like that. They taught us it was the glow of the enemy. It was just people living without fear. The second thing was the bathroom. Of all things, in the building where they took me, I turned a tap, and hot water came pouring out. I stood there and couldn't move. Back at our quarters, we lined up before dawn for a single bucket. In winter, the pipes froze, and we broke ice out of the ground to get water. I thought about the winter my wife was sick, when I couldn't even heat water for her properly, and I wiped my eyes again. One ordinary stream of hot water. Why was that so far out of reach for us? The third was how people treated me. The officials here didn't call me Dongmu comrade. They called me Seonsengnim sir. Soldiers and civil servants alike lowered their heads and showed me where to go. Nobody barked at me. Nobody threatened me. They were trying to help. The kindness was so foreign that my body went stiff, and my first instinct was to look for the trap. But there wasn't one. They were treating a person like a person. And that's when I understood what kind of place I'd spent my life in, and I thought, this is it. This is the ground my son gets to grow up on. Here, Jin Hyuk would never know hunger, hiding behind medals or boots outside the door. Then finally the day came. Word arrived that my father and my son had crossed and reached the south. Over the Tumen, the long way around, and now they were coming to me. My legs nearly went out from under me. The doors of the reception center opened, and a small shadow came running through. Jin Hyuk, thinner than I remembered. But those eyes hadn't changed at all. He shouted, "Father," and the whole world stopped. Behind him, my father came in slowly, with a cane. The road had written itself all over his face, but his eyes were at peace. I dropped to my knees and pulled the boy in, small and warm against my chest. And that's when he spotted something sticking out of my flight suit pocket. A photograph folded and refolded until it was coming apart. His eyes went wide. "That's my drawing. You still have it." An airplane and his father. The drawing that kept my finger off the trigger. The drawing I carried over my heart across every mile of that crossing. I held my son, and this time I let myself cry. So now I can answer the question I started with. Why I broke down in that cockpit. It wasn't fear of dying. Those weren't tears about getting shot down. I get to hold this boy again. I get to take this small hand in mine again. That certainty is what broke me open. My son goes to school here now. At night, he turns on a light and reads as long as he wants. When he's sick, he sees a doctor. He laughs with his friends, and not one person asks him what his father talks about at home. He's living the ordinary days. I wanted so badly to give him. It took betting my life to learn how rare ordinary is. I still look up at the sky, and I think about the fact that somewhere up there right now, there may be another man who doesn't know which way to turn the nose. I hope the lights of this land reach him too.
One pilot bet everything to get here, and his story asks us something. Everything we take for granted. Someone else has to risk their life to touch it. The lights that stay on, a stream of hot water, sending your child to school without being afraid. Just an ordinary day. For those of you who lived through the guns of the Korean War, who crossed those barren years, with nothing you'll understand. What was in that pilot's tears better than anyone? Someday the lights we built together may reach all the way across that river. Someday every one of us may look at each other, not as comrades, but as neighbours. That's what I truly hope for. Thank you for staying with this story to the end. I'll see you in the next one.